Hello NBA fans and welcome back to another video here on the NBA the week that was. In today's video, we'll be going through the second round of the NBA playoffs in the 2019-2020 NBA season. There were a lot of great matchups, some big upsets, and I'll be going over all of that in this video. So without further ado, let's get right into the first series in the Eastern Conference. Let's start off with one of the biggest upsets of the second round. In this matchup, the first seeded Milwaukee Bucks lost in 5 games to the Miami Heat, who were the 5th seed coming into this matchup. This was one of the biggest shocks for me. I did not expect this Miami Heat team, who had just gotten Jimmy Butler, who did have some really good young players, and I felt like they were a really good regular season team. They had some great games, but given their inexperience and just overall, it was just with Milwaukee having Giannis, the MVP, who just won the MVP yesterday, being the DPOI as well, having one of the best supporting casts in the NBA. No one thought that team was going to lose to anyone. A lot of analysts had the Bucks winning the finals. However, the Miami Heat, the 5-seeded Miami Heat, led by Eric Spoelstra, their coach, and Jimmy Butler, their star, ended up beating the Bucks in 5 games. Now, how did this happen? I just think it was Miami's brilliant defense and their ability to step up when it mattered the most. Most of the games were quite close in this series, and Miami always proved that they have some big game players that can step up even though they're not regarded as stars. Of course, Jimmy Butler was there, knocking out clutch free throws, making great defensive plays, always putting in that 110% effort. But guys like Goran Dragic, Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic has been an all-star. He's a veteran point guard, but no one expected him to play so well in that series and really be the go-to man on offense if Jimmy Butler was getting locked up by Wes Matthews or Chris Middleton. Dragic was dependable, was able to get past his defenders, finish by the rim, also step back and make some great jump shots. He was really their man on offense. One guy I'm really impressed by in this series was Tyler Hero. Man, this kid's 20 years old, and he stepped up big time. He's always been the underdog, the villain. Back in high school, he got death threats for decommitting from his hometown university and going to Kentucky, but he just embraced this role and stepped up, making clutch threes, making the right pass, doing things that any rookie in a normal circumstance would be quite afraid to do. Tyler Hero looked like a 10-year-old player in the league. He was just so good in this series and was really crucial. However, it wasn't just Miami's brilliant basketball that won them this series. It was the inability for the Bucks to step it up when it mattered the most. Ever since the bubble started, the Bucks just haven't looked right. They haven't looked like the Bucks that were dominating the whole regular season. Giannis couldn't make free throws in the clutch. Chris Middleton was really good one game, horrible the other game. The best game they played was without Giannis, which was so shocking. Giannis did his thing, getting around 25-26 points, around 15-16 rebounds, 7 or 8 assists. He was playing like the MVP. But that supporting cast that had been arguably the best supporting cast in the NBA this year really didn't step it up, which really hurt the Bucks in this series. So overall, it was a big upset, but looking at the way Miami played, didn't really feel like they were the 5 seed. They felt more like the 1 seed than the Bucks did. The other second round matchup in the Eastern Conference was between the 2nd seeded Toronto Raptors and the 3 seeded Boston Celtics. Coming into this series, everyone knew it could go either way. Both teams are deep. They played some of the best defense of all the NBA teams. I think they were ranked 3rd and 4th respectively in defensive rating, and they both had something to prove. The Celtics, a young team led by their young star Jason Tatum, wanted to prove that they're here to stay. Toronto, after losing Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, their superstar, Danny Green, they're a serviceable starter who was knocking down threes and playing the best defense for them. After losing them, still being the 2nd seed and really looking confident in the bubble. Both teams were out there to prove something, and you could tell that in the series. There were some games that went to the overtime, there were close games, but in the end, the Celtics ended up pulling away in 7 games and really proved themselves that they're a team to contend with, or really to be afraid of in the Eastern Conference. How did this happen? I think the key factor was, 1, the inability of Siakam to step up like he did in the regular season, and 2, the Celtics having a defined game plan to go to in the end of games. As I said, everyone thought this series was going to be close, and it ended up happening. 7 games, close games. When it's a close game, you need a superstar to step up. That's what really helped the Raptors last year. Kawhi Leonard, they could just hand him the ball, let him isolate, do his thing, and get buckets. Siakam was that guy in the regular season. However, in this playoffs, in this series especially, he looked so bad. Twitter was going off on him, really just saying he can only spin move. He was only scoring 10 to 12 points a game, while he's a max level player who was an all-star starter this year. You can't get that from a guy who needs to step up. Van Vliet tried his best. Kyle Lowry saved the series for them in Game 6, as did OG Anunoby in Game 3, hitting that insane game winner. If he didn't hit that, they would have gone down 3-0, and I don't think they would have won that next game. However, there were players that stepped up, but the player that needed to step up the most, Pascal Siakam, didn't do it, which really cost the Raptors. They tried their best on defense, Nick Nurse employing those zones, really doing his best, but he had some bad in-game management as well. You could tell he's a second-year head coach compared to Brad Stevens, who's a 6-7-year coaching veteran. Nick Nurse, despite being the coach of the year, made some bad decisions, giving Fred VanVleet in isolation for 3 to tie the game. I don't think that was a good idea. They had to run a proper play in Game 7, in fact. And that really cost the Raptors. I think missing out Kawhi Leonard being that go-to offensive weapon that they needed, which was Siakam in the regular season, didn't happen in this series. However, it wasn't just the inability for Siakam or Nick Nurse to make right decisions. It also was the Celtics really stepping up when it mattered the most. Guys like Marcus Smart stepping it up on defense. He had a crazy block in Game 7 to really save the game. I think that was the game-defining play. It was a chase down block. Norman Powell had a wide open layup. Smart came out of nowhere and blocked that shot and really put all the momentum on the Celtics to maintain their lead, which ended up helping them win the game. But again, they had go-to options in the closing minutes. Tatum, I think he's a superstar in this league already. Expect him to be a top 3 player soon. Really soon. When guys like LeBron and KD retire, I think Tatum can be one of the best players in the NBA. But they also had Cardiac Kemba. That man and his step back in the mid-range game is so beautiful to watch. And he really, even though he had a rough series, I think having Kemba as their leader really gave the Celtics confidence. They're a young team, and without Kemba, I don't think they would have been as successful as they have been so far. So having Kemba's leadership, some go-to plays in the late minutes of games, and Brad Stevens as their coach really helped the Celtics win this series. Now let's move over to the Western Conference. In the first matchup between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Houston Rockets. I think we all knew that the Los Angeles Lakers were going to win this series after they went up 2-1. I mean, Game 1 was scary for the Lakers. The Rockets really looked like they were there to prove something and really win a championship. Harden stepped up. Harden is always stepping up. What am I saying? But guys like Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker, Robert Covington, they not only locked down guys like Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who both struggled in Game 1, but also were able to score the 3-ball and play perfect Rockets basketball, which is threes and layups. However, after Game 1, when the Lakers decided to bench JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard and move Anthony Davis to the 5, the series was over. LeBron James stepped it up, and when that guy steps it up, it's over. It's literally over. For lack of a better word, LeBron James, when he steps it up, is just dominant. He just blew past Robert Covington, PJ Tucker, anyone trying to guard him, and with the relatively smaller lineup with McGee or Dwight Howard not playing, Davis was unlocked at the 5, just abusing PJ Tucker in the paint. Whenever anyone tried to switch onto him, Davis just went crazy. He played so well from games 2 to 5, and it wasn't just the offense for the Lakers. I feel the defining factors for the Lakers this year is not their offense, despite having an offense with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The way that team defends is so beautiful to watch. Frank Vogel is a great defensive coach. Despite not being the best offensive mind, you don't need to be a good offensive mind when you have LeBron James running the offense for you. But as a defensive coach, Frank Vogel has instilled this eagerness in his team to always play a hard defense, which isn't too common with LeBron teams that we've seen in the past until later stages in the season. However, this Lakers team has defended as a unit for the whole year and really continued to step it up, locking down James Harden, just making Westbrook continue to break shots, not looking like his former MVP self. The Rockets started missed threes, and it was over then. However, an X factor for the Lakers in this series was Rondo's return. He was out for the start of the bubble and the first round series. However, when he came back in game 2, he unlocked the bench's potential. As a playmaker, Rondo is still up there as one of the best playmakers in the NBA. He has a greater understanding for the game than most players, and really was there to set up the offense, and he even made three-pointers, which is not common for him. He really was that third person when Davis and LeBron sat out, or if it was just one of them. Rondo was that guy to support them, and that was an X factor in this series. But to be honest, after watching game 2, I knew that this series was going to be over. Now, let's move on to the series that I've been waiting to talk about this whole video. The next matchup in the Western Conference, and the last matchup in the Western Conference second round, was between the 3-seeded Denver Nuggets and the 2-seeded Los Angeles Clippers. And guess what? The Denver Nuggets ended up coming out on top in 7 games. After going down 3-1, everyone, I think any logical NBA mind was, this series is over. It was halftime. The Clippers were up 56-40. We thought that the Nuggets they already had their bags packed in the hotel and were on their flight home. However, the way they played those last 3 games, carefree, beautiful team basketball, it was a joy to watch, and the Nuggets ended up beating the hated Clippers. I feel everyone hates the Clippers right now, and ended up winning the series in 7 games. Now, how the hell did this happen? Well, let me tell you. So, when the Clippers were playing well, I think when they play well, when they're locked in, best team in the NBA, I'll say it again next year. The wing depth they possess, the scoring ability. I mean, when Paul George is at his best, Kawhi's at his best, Lou Will is at his best. This team is unstoppable. However, there was just something about this Clippers team. There was no driving factor behind them. It felt like they were just playing for fun. They're like, oh, it's the Nuggets. They're a young team. Who cares about Jokic? Who cares about Murray? We'll win this series easily. But when Paul George started to miss shots, Kawhi Leonard was good for games 5 and 6, but was horrible in game 7. When these guys started getting frustrated with Jokic, just making these absurd fadeaways, when Jamal Murray was going crazy, hitting step back threes, making 360 layups, they went under pressure, which shouldn't happen for a Clippers team that has this much talent. They should have believed in their talent. Doc Rivers should have believed in them, but it just didn't end up happening. I think one of the biggest keys in this series for the Clippers losing, actually let me tell you about 2. 1, Paul George. Come on, man, you're a max level player. The Clippers essentially gave up their whole 10-year future to get you to support Kawhi Leonard, and you do this? PG 13%. You need to step it up next season. You are really bad right now. And I mean, in soccer they say form is temporary but class is permanent. I hope that's the case for you. I've seen you be one of the best players in the NBA, but with the way you played in this series, oh my god, you have been horrible. He couldn't make a shot. He couldn't pass. He just wasn't a good player. He looked like a G League player playing as who was meant to be a max level contract all-star. I don't know what happened with Paul George, but something wasn't right. Also, I mean, Doc Rivers, despite being a great coach, I mean, he has won a ring, but now you look back at it, he's always had great players with him. And do you think, is he a good coach? I mean, I think he's a decent coach, but he hasn't had too much playoff success with the Clippers. And with this team, I think it's one of the biggest disappointments of this decade. Well, it's a short decade. Let's say from 2010 to 2020, this is one of the biggest upsets. I mean, how does this Clippers team, with arguably the deepest roster in this league, lose to a Nuggets team led by a 26-year-old Nikola Jokic and a 23-year-old Jamal Murray? It's all about the chemistry. It's all about the teamwork. It's all about that brotherhood that was in Denver that wasn't in the Clippers. Jokic was there, making these absurd shots, being that playmaker, being unselfish. Jamal Murray scoring like he just didn't care. I feel that the Nuggets were playing so carefree. They're like, I mean, we have nothing to lose. Let's just go out, have some fun. Jokic said that after every game that they won. I noticed that. He always said, we're just out here to have fun. And I think that's the mentality that the Clippers lack. They took so much pressure on themselves that they ended up losing this series. And so there was this Twitter post. At 56-40 with around 10 minutes to go in the third quarter, Marcus Morris and Denver power forward Paul Millsap got into a bit of a scuffle. They were throwing some words at each other when Marcus Morris said, yeah, you guys better have your bags packed. You guys are going home tonight. Since that point, the Nuggets came back from 16 or 19 point deficits in games 5, 6, and 7 and ended up winning this series. I just think that their carefree way of playing basketball is so much fun to watch and was so crucial for them. I don't think any other team put in the Nuggets position would have come back. I think they had the confidence from coming back down 3-1 against the Jazz. And again, they're like, we're out here to have fun. And that's all what sports should be about. Have fun with your brothers, and just have a great time and win games. And that's what ended up happening for the Denver Nuggets. And that's why the Clippers are getting so much hate. The pressure they took on themselves, the way they were clanking shots in Game 7. It was just so much fun to watch the Clippers lose. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And with that, I would like to wrap up the second round analysis of the NBA playoffs here on the NBA the week that was. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below, and if you're new on the channel, subscribe as well. Stay tuned for my Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals analysis, my Finals analysis, and then some new videos in the off-season. And with that, I'll catch you guys on the next episode here on the NBA the week that was. See ya!